All right, seeing as it's 7:05, we'll get this underway. At this time, I will call to order the Zoom meeting for the Southampton Planning Board, Wednesday, January 20. And it's also televised in Charter Channel 191. Our first agenda item this evening is Ed Gibson, Town Administrator, who's going to give us a brief presentation or overview of the open space and recreation plan that he would like to submit to the state, I believe, correct?
Yes, it's actually there in draft form, but as a formality, and I know Cindy has brought you up on this, but to do a presentation to the planning board and at the end of it, ask you if the planning board would take a vote to officially adopt it as, for an open space and recreation plan, and also ask you if you would sign a letter of support to send along to the state. They are currently reviewing it in draft. We'll probably make a few updates to it. There have been some comments made already, predominantly regarding open space land and who the correct landowners are. So, this has been about a year in the making, and I will try to make it as short and sweet as possible. It's a 216-page document, but I'll try to keep it under 15 minutes for you.
Go ahead, Ed.
Oh, thank you.
Proceed. Yeah.
All right. Just a little background. The purpose of the plan is to evaluate and detail the town's current open space and recreational resources and anticipate the challenges these resources may face in the coming years, identify community desires and needs related to open space and recreation, and recommend targeted actions that will help Southampton conserve its natural resources, provide excellent recreational opportunities, and preserve the character of the community. And just a little bit about the planning process and public participation. The Open Space and Recreation Plan, referred to as the OSRP, update group was formed in 2019 with technical assistance provided by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, the PVPC. And the committee met at properly noticed meetings beginning in November of 2019 through September 2020. And the updates working group was comprised or is comprised of Yvonne Betty Davis, representing the Council of Aging, Janet Brown, representing the Community Preservation Act Committee, Paul Fergal, representing the Greenway Committee, Ed Gibson, representing Town Administrator, Yahoo on Paul, Brittany Goodermuth, representing the Conservation Commission, Maureen Groden, representing the Select Board, Paula Mack, representing the Recreation Committee, Cindy Palmer, representing the Planning Board, Mark Reed, representing the Recreation Committee, Nancy Rocio, representing the Council on Aging, Francine Tishman, representing the Select Board, and James Malunas, representing the Water Commission. Thank you. Cindy was an immense help, so thank you for sharing with us for this project. And part of putting this together, there was one outreach meeting which was held for the public to have public comments at a workshop, and there was also a survey done which had some great participation to it, and that's how some of these goals and objectives were reached. And basically what I'm going to do is go over those goals and objectives as the ones that apply specifically to the planning board. And let's see if I can do this and share my screen. Goal number one is identify and preserve important parcels for ecological, recreational, cultural, and historical value to create a town-wide green network. And Objective G101 is increase capacity for management of town-owned open space lands and promote public use of existing open space network.
Excuse me just a minute, Ed. Did you want to share that? Because it's not on the screen as yet, if you were sharing a document.
I was trying to. So let's see if I go back in. Okay. Let me try it again. See it now?
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I had that screen minimized, so I didn't see the share the screen. So under that first these objectives, objective number 2, or strategy number 2, is maintain existing, and I got to go down a little bit here. I can do this. Yeah. Maintain existing and increase other potential relationships with land trusts like Kestrel Land Trust and other friends of organizations to accept more contributions to preserve more land. And the responsible parties were the Planning Board, Town Administrator, Select Board, Conservation Commission, the Community Preservation Commission, and the resources needed would be volunteer time, and the target date was fiscal year 2021.
Okay, can I ask a question? Just because this will help me understand the rest of them too. Like, what would be the planning board's role in that? Because you just listed out like a bunch of different groups, and I guess the idea was like if that group had any role whatsoever in that goal, then they're listed there. Is that how it works?
Right, exactly. And it may, it could be something like one of those groups coming to the planning board and asking the planning board if they would support, preserving a certain area, or it could be as simple as it was about a year ago when the water commissioners, through a grant, and the help of a grant and community preservation, procured the land on Pomeroy Meadow Road, which was in an aquifer, and they could come to the planning board and say, here's what we want to do. We're going to take it to town meeting. It's going to require a vote. Could we have your support in this process?
Okay, thank you for helping me understand.
And like I say, that might vary. What's that?
I'm sorry, Ed. That one probably should have open space committee on it as well, because we're actively involved with keeping a relationship with Kestrel at this point in time, and going forward and actually making contact with landowners.
Okay. And then let's see. Strategy S3 is continue to update the town's open space and recreation plan, OSRP, every 7 years in order to qualify for state and federal grants. The state local acquisitions for natural diversity land grant and federal land and water conservation fund, LWCF grants, provide funding for communities for acquisition of open space, but the town must have an updated OSRP in order to qualify. And the identified responsible parties for that one are Conservation Commission, Planning Board, Town Administrator, and Open Space Committee. And the resources needed would be volunteer time, staff time, and or consultants, and the target date is fiscal year 2027.
Make your computer easier to use. Windows will read and scan this list automatically.
I'll turn
Press the space bar.
I like that voice. Strategy number 4 under this goal is maintain a current environmental inventory, implement management plans on existing conservation areas, and improve and maintain existing trail networks. And the responsible parties are Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and Parks Commission. And the resources needed would be consultant and or staff time and volunteer time. And the target date is fiscal year 2021. The next objective under this goal is G102, connect open space resources to enhance community livability and wildlife habitat and to encourage walking and biking. And the first strategy under this objective is develop a rail trail along the existing rail bed to create a north-south connection between the numerous open space areas along its length. Consider expanding the current plan to extend the rail trail south along its entire length to Swanson Corners and the Westfield Town Line. And the responsible parties are the Planning Board, the Parks Commission, the Highway Department, and the Conservation Committee. The needed resources are staff time, volunteer time, consultant, transportation improvements, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and Mass DOT. And the target date is fiscal year 2023. Let's see, strategy number 2. Under this objective is develop a Manhan River Greenway and Wildlife Corridor Management Plan and develop a list of priority parcels for acquisition or easements to support the development and enhancement of this Greenway and Wildlife Corridor area. The responsible parties are Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and Select Board. And the resources needed are staff time, volunteer time, CPA funds, state land grant, Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund grants, and the target date is fiscal year 2023. And under goal number 2, I'm just going to read it to you. There are not any planning board responsible parties under goal number 2, but goal number 2 is protect Southampton's remaining agricultural lands, promote farming, and create opportunities for residents to become involved in local agriculture. Goal number 3 is protect Southampton's water resources. And the first objective under this, which is G301, continue to protect Southampton's public water supply and the Barnes Aquifer for generations to come. And the first strategy under this one that pertains to the planning board is strategy number 3, adopt low impact development LID standards for stormwater management, the zoning, subdivision, and stormwater regulations. Low impact developments are designed to reflect natural hydrology, minimize impervious surfaces, treat stormwater in small, decentralized structures, preserve portions of the site in natural conditions, and use natural topography for drainage ways and storage. And the responsible parties are Planning Board, Highway Department, and Conservation Commission. The resources needed are staff time, volunteer time, and consultant. And the target date is fiscal year 2021. Strategy number 4 is consider adopting a river protection overlay district that minimizes development impact in sensitive river buffer areas. This overlay district can increase community control over activities on riverfront areas not regulated by the Massachusetts River Protection Act. The district designates a portion of the riverbank from the shoreline land within an established distance from each bank. It provides restrictions on uses and structures that will damage the environmental integrity of the river. Uses permitted as a matter of right should be limited to those consistent with the scenic qualities of the river, such as agricultural production, recreational uses, responsible emergency procedures, conservation measures, and residential development on lots with frontage on an existing way. And the responsible parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Town Meeting. And the needed resources are volunteer time and or consultant. And the target date is 2022, fiscal year 2022. Let's say, let's scan down to strategy number 8. And that is reevaluate participation in a regional committee to address impacts of development of regional impact of the Barnes Aquifer. The responsible party is Planning Board. The needed resources are volunteer time, and the target date is fiscal year 2021. And then goal number 4 is promote land use policies that protect the town's natural lands and rural community character. Under this, goal 401 is balance residential development with the protection of the town's natural, scenic, and historic resources. Strategy number 1 is establish priority areas and parcels for scenic preservation. Responsible parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Open Space Committee. The resources needed are staff time, volunteer time, and consultant. And the target date for completion is fiscal year 2022. Strategy number 2 is review and expand the town list of designated scenic roads. The responsible parties are Highway Department, Planning Board, Tree Warden, and Historical Commission. The needed resources needed are staff time, volunteer time, and consultant, and the target date is fiscal year 2022. Strategy number 3 is adopt overlay zoning districts that protect scenic vistas, for example, along the southern portion of Cottage Highway Route 10, which include buffers and design standards for development. The responsible parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Historical Commission, and Town Meeting. Needed resources are staff time, volunteer time, and consultant, and the target date for completion is fiscal year 2023. Strategy number 4 under this objective is strengthen solar bylaw for ecosystem services and climate application. The responsible parties are Planning Board and Town Meeting. The resources needed are volunteer time, and the target date for completion is fiscal year 2022. The second objective under this goal is G402, establish land use and development policies that respond to infrastructure capacity. Strategy number 1 is hold a series of public presentations about the benefits of smart growth policies that concentrate development in some places and discourage in others. Present zoning strategies to preserve rural character within the context of a comprehensive smart growth zoning strategy. Responsible parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Select Board, local cable access channel, and school department. And the resources needed are staff time, volunteer time, and consultant. And the target date is fiscal year 2022. Next is strategy number 2 under this objective. Hold a series of public presentations about the benefits of smart growth policies that concentrate development in some places and discourage it in others. Present zoning strategies to preserve rural character within the context of a comprehensive smart growth zoning strategy. The responsible parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Select Board, local cable access channel, and the school department. Oh, and I messed that one up. Did I? Yes, I did. Strategy number 2 is hold a series of public presentations about the benefits of cluster development or the building of homes closer together so that the remaining land on the site can be protected as open space or farmland. And those responsible parties are the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, Select Board, Local Cable Access Channel, and the School Department, and the needed resources are time and consultants. And the target date is fiscal year 2022.
I have a question on that one. Wasn't that really something
Sure.
the Housing Authority was bringing up? The last one about the cluster development? And should they be included on that list that you had?
They could be. And it's been brought up by more than the Housing Authority, but that's a good point.
I just know that we, as the planning board, have had conversations with them about that topic. So,
Okay, I will add them to that one. Okay. And then strategy number 4 is promote the use of Southampton's agricultural preservation district, and the essential parties are Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and Agricultural Commission. And the needed resources are volunteer time, and the target date for that is fiscal year 2021. And then the last goal is goal 5, which is promote adequate recreational facilities to serve a variety of needs for all citizens of Southampton. And under this goal, there are not any objectives or strategies that the planning board is a responsible party for.
Oh, darn.
Oh, darn, yes.
Well, my first,
So that is, go ahead.
no, go ahead and finish.
So those are the 5 goals that were established under the updated draft of the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which will span the years of 2020 through 2027. And basically, I've reviewed the objectives and those strategies that specifically would pertain in some way, shape, or form to the planning board.
Now, who initiates all these objectives and tries to get them completed within the target dates that are aligned?
I mean, depending on which ones they are, and I can only remember, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 that just said planning board. So it could be any of those, committees that are listed that initiates it. But what we're hoping for and what the Open Space and Recreation Plan is, designed to do, and it becomes a portion of our master plan, which we'll have to update in a few years too, is if some of these, it won't just sit on a shelf, that you'll reference it once in a while, and that if something comes up along the way that comes across, say, the planning board, meeting or agenda that pertains to one of these that, the planning board is a responsible party for, they might take a look at it and say, hey, that was mentioned in the OSRP. What was the objective and the strategy? We're starting to deal with this. Maybe it's time to reach out to any of the other parties that are listed there and, ask them their thoughts on this particular item. Move forward. Or it could be another committee that comes before, and all of a sudden they end up taking the initiative or the lead. But the plan itself is designed for these boards and committees, including the select board and myself, to keep in mind these objectives that, the community, through either the survey or that workshop, identified as being important to them. And is there a way to incorporate them or address them, during this 7-year, time period? And to me, it's obvious a plan, but, those things that are, and of course, COVID knocked the heck out of, fiscal year 20 and 21, at the end and the beginning. I look at it and say, okay, those items that are listed as, target date of fiscal year 21 or 22, even though we might not actually complete them by then because of what has happened with COVID-19, those to me stick out as probably, more important, goals or objectives to look at it than in the ones that are in 26 or 27. Those will come along later on.
No, but how are we to obtain these? Are we going to be rewriting zoning regulations in conjunction with these, or incorporating them into the existing zoning bylaws we have?
It's very possible. And I mean, and for you, I know you're going through some of your, zoning regulations and whatever currently, and looking to edit them and amend them and bring them up to date. So it may be an opportunity to, look at some of these things and say, okay, should we try to address that in the update of our zoning bylaws? And then there might be other items that you say, well, we might be better off not addressing them in our current update, but it might be possible in the future, if something comes up, to rewrite one, or maybe, how would I say it, add one in the future. And I'm not, fully versed on, what you are, currently reviewing for your zone bylaws with Mr. Smith or whatever. And, I'm just throwing one out is, okay, if you were looking to bring our solar zoning bylaw up to date, okay, maybe along with looking at what you had already thought about bringing it up to date, maybe you look at what the objectives are in here, and should that be incorporated at this time?
All right, well, that answers my question then, because we are picking up the discussion tonight with further zoning revisions, but we've already completed, I don't know, up to maybe 6 chapters. So we'll probably have to ask our consultant to maybe go through this list and insert them in the particular bylaws that they're pertinent to. So otherwise, you could have a dozen different hearings or meetings on some of these issues to try to bring them about, but they're not going to have any teeth unless they're in the zoning.
Right, exactly. Very true.
Can I make a suggestion? Unless there's strong opposition to anything that's proposed in this draft right now, or if there's other things that you think should be in there, I propose we, accept the draft. But I also think we should consider another meeting more dedicated to looking at these, where planning board is designated as part of the responsible party team at another meeting, and really kind of come up with strategies on what we're going to do, whether it's looking at the zoning bylaws or doing something. I think we should do this in 2 parts, and some of the fiscal year dates of completion are a couple of years down the road, so maybe we have some time to work on this. That's my thought.
Yeah, and
And
I don't quarrel with that, but we've also got master plan that we've been handed, and we've got a laundry list there, and now we've been just handed another laundry list. So we could have a meeting every week for the next year, and probably maybe we might accomplish all the things that we're asked to do in between the two committees.
Hopefully there's some
Well, that's good. At
overlap.
least we know it'll keep you out of trouble then.
Yeah. We got to up the stipends from 0.
There you go. We'll double them, Paul.
Yeah, okay.
So I have a comment. In my experience, if there's not a clear owner of an objective or a goal, then it's just wishful thinking that will be accomplished. My recommendation is where it says responsible party, that there's at least one highlighted as the primary owner of it, so that they are driving that action to completion. Because otherwise, I'd say that you will be less likely to achieve your goals.
Anyone else got anything to comment on that, Keith or Paul?
Don't have anything.
No, not at the moment, Paul.
All right, then I guess we'll have to take Cindy's recommendation. We'll look into it and see how we're going to approach this. But if we're already doing zoning, I could see incorporating into zoning rather than having a separate entity and another set of rules and regs. If we can incorporate this in what we're already working on, then it's not going to create a lot of extra time and effort to put this into work. So do I have a motion that we would accept the open space and recreation plan and adopt it, and we sign that and send it forward to Ed and the select board and eventually the state? Do I have a motion on that?
I move that we support this draft, that we also support it with a letter from the planning board signed by our chairperson.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Cindy and seconded by Dan. Any other further comment? Take a roll call. Keith?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
Paul? Yes. So we've adopted it 500 to send that through. And then Ed, you sent me a draft of that. If you want to complete that with the date on it, I'll sign it and get it to you.
What? The one I just put up?
No, remember the letter, the draft letter?
Yeah, I just tried that one up.
The date.
Are you able to see it?
You have to close that one, Ed. You have to close the first document.
Okay.
But I have a copy of it.
Okay. I did one up with the date on it and whatever. So I will just send you that and put it on your letterhead and sign it.
Yeah, you already had that. Just fill in the date, tonight's date, the 20th, and then I'll sign it for you.
Okay, we'll do that. I'll get it off to you tonight.
Thank you
all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You have a good evening.
You're going to close out your screen? Yeah, there you go.
Did that do it? All right. We'll see ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, now Ryan's in the spotlight. Hello there.
How we doing?
I got to go back to my main picture here. Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith is here. All right. Before we start with Larry Smith and bylaws, There's a question that Paul Fergal posed to me, and I said I would bring it up regarding the 32 High Street stormwater permit we approved last week. One of the conditions was a precast box culvert that Keith had recommended. And Paul just had posed a question about it, and we just want to clear it up to make sure we're correct on this and get the board's feelings. So Paul, would you express that concern of yours?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Paul. The question I have is centered around us dictating a particular methodology of construction for a privately owned structure that I understand it's in the best interest of the town that it's, this higher quality precast unit in lieu of a cast in place, which, I understand Keith's concern. My concern is we don't own it. We'll never own it. It's private property. It's not a roadway that we accept or part of a system that we accept. An example I give is any new subdivision we approve, we do not own the structures that are as part of a roadway network. So the homeowners association owns the structures. We don't have a say what these structures are. For example, we don't tell them that they have to buy American castings. So a contractor is going to buy the cheapest ones that come out of India, right? And they don't buy American-made items. So the idea is we don't dictate something, or my understanding is we can't dictate something we don't own or will never own. So my concern is, I think we don't have the authority to ask for a simple or a particular item that has to be constructed by somebody. That's like asking us that somebody needs X type of wall or X type of structure on their property that we will never own. And I kind of disagree with that concept that, we can tell them to do something. If we were owning that particular item at the end of the day, like, if someone's putting in a new subdivision and they got to put a retaining wall that's going to be butt ugly, made out of, some kind of scored concrete or some, god awful looking material. Yeah, absolutely. We can come in and say, you got to do some kind of decorative stone wall or something, or a different system, or a mechanically stabilized earth rather than a rock wall or something of that sort. That's gravity. The point I'm trying to make is, we don't get into that type of dictation on or direct, what they're required to do.
Could I make a comment on this? Because I have a thought, and I think the reason we're not trying to dictate what they're doing for no reason. I think if we look at what the failure was last time at 32 High Street, it was the culvert itself that caused the flooding into the road. Like that was the point at which that stream got diverted onto the road. So because of that, we have concern over the quality of that culvert, because if the culvert were to be made of substandard, then it could again fail. And if it does fail, then we could end up in the same situation that we were in, what was it, 2 months ago, when the there was a big washout onto High Street. So I think that the town does have some concern over the quality of that culvert, because again, we don't want to end up with High Street being covered in mud. So that's my thought.
I see your point, Dan, but legally we don't have that right. My point is, we can't tell him to put a Cadillac in of an object if a Chevy, whatever, Impala is going to do the trick. Okay, we can tell him that the Impala has to be certified by his site engineer at the end of the day, that it was constructed in conformance with what the site engineer said needs to be done. But we can't tell him that he's got to spend another $30,000 to get somebody to install a more expensive, and I don't know what the number is. I'm just throwing some number out there. So the point is, it's something that we can't dictate. Maybe Larry can chime in and give us his.
Oh, before Larry does, I'd want to ask Keith for his comment there on the precast to begin with.
Yeah, I think the intent of the comment was, and I understand your point, Paul, but my concern with this particular project is that shortcuts have continuously been taken, direction hasn't been followed. So that was my suggestion to the design engineer. Now, if the applicant's design engineer had made an argument back, then I think, we could have had a spirited discussion about exactly where we are now. But he didn't necessarily, I guess, make a counter argument. So the concern was, while it's on private property, if they installed something that did fail, that would clearly affect areas outside of that private property parcel. So that was the concern, because that has been the history on that project. It's just an unwillingness to consider downstream impacts.
Larry, are you following this? You got to unmute yourself. You got to unmute yourself, Larry.
Oh, Larry.
Larry, here you go.
Okay. Were you following that, Larry?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
My microphone is muted. Okay.
Comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess looking at, I'll work with Paul's analogy, which is, I don't think this is so much a matter of whether it's an Impala or a Chevy. I think it's more like whether it's a station wagon or a subcompact. And I think you can. I think where I'd be looking at it from Paul's point of view is trying to dictate, the actual manufacturer of that precast, who is making it. So I don't think you can necessarily require that it be a Chevy or a Dodge, but I think you can be specific in terms of what kind of vehicle you want that to be. And I know that, in fact, when storm scepters started coming up, 20 years ago, there was a big thing where, in fact, we were actually not allowing certain types of storm scepters because we didn't feel that they were actually designed properly. And so we sort of, excluded that particular brand. Not something you often have to do, but I don't think, I don't have a problem with it. And in fact, I think it's, in light of all the other.
So is
Larry, you've been breaking up. I don't know if you guys had problems hearing Larry, but there's lots.
Yeah, I actually couldn't really understand.
I have had a problem hearing all of you too.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's been broken up and it's been freezing and there's been a lag.
Must be that service up in Leeds.
So, Larry, I had
The hamsters are doing really well.
I had a message go across
I
my
tell you, let
screen that your bandwidth is not adequate. Yours,
Yeah, what?
your bandwidth is inadequate. That's what the message on my screen said.
I'm surprised at that because it's 200.
Okay.
Perhaps if it would help, maybe you could turn your video off and you could just use audio as a suggestion.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is probably hang up and call in again. Try that.
Go ahead and we'll continue with our discussion. So where are we at? What do you feel? Is it worth it to go back or just leave it as is?
I have a concern, and that has to do with something that Randall said last week or last time we met. And he said something about if this guy doesn't finish his project, he might abandon it. Now, I don't know how reasonable that is, but then it would become an issue for the town to do something to make certain there, isn't damage to the public road or damage to other people's properties. I don't know how likely that is, but I do remember Randall saying that.
Well, this particular structure that we're talking about, Cindy, is needed so that he could cross his property to access further deeper into his property. So if he walks away from the project and never installs this particular culvert, it's not a big deal. It's a stream crossing, but it is a substantial structure. It's one that I don't think is easily cast in place on site. I think it had a clear span of, 14, 16 feet. I mean, I was surprised to see the size that the engineer had come up with, but I kind of agree with what Larry said. I didn't say it had to be a contact precast bridge structure. I just said it should be a precast structure.
Would anybody like to hear Ryan's comment as a developer? He's here for the next hearing. No?
No. Mute him.
I'm here as a ZBA, I believe, right?
Yeah. What have you got to say about this discussion about the culvert? Just from your developing standpoint.
I did a similar one on White Loaf Road, and it was a combination of cast in place and precast. I think the span was 16 or 18 feet. I mean, it's doable either way, but I think you can direct them. I think Paul's right. You can direct them in which direction or what the engineer has drawn, but you can't specifically specify what you want them to use as a brand. Hence, I use American-made castings on my subdivisions because I want it to last.
But I mean, is the technicality here on that term precast? This is beyond me. Versus just box culvert versus precast box culvert.
No, the difference here is cast in place, which is you put up temporary formwork, lay down rebar, have a cement truck pull up, and physically place the concrete on site. Which to do that on site requires obvious site controls and temporary shoring and means and methods that I think are well outside this particular developer's ability. Where precast is it's fabricated and built in a controlled environment. It's delivered on a truck. It's picked with an excavator and set in place. So precast is not a brand name. It's a methodology, if you will. So there's probably 5 or 6 different precast distributors, precast vendors that could supply a product to meet this applicant's need. So I didn't tell him which precaster to use. I made the recommendation that span should be precast versus cast in place on site.
Paul, when I did my project, it was all driven by what the engineer had drawn and what the conservation and DEP allowed and approved. I mean, I'm assuming it's driven by that aspect.
So the capacity, the hydraulic and the opening of those, we're not saying one's going to be 3 feet wide and the other one's going to be 12 feet wide. It's going to be, the methodology, as Keith said, how it's produced. Is it manufactured on site versus if it's, pre-manufactured by, Aero Concrete or whoever is the contractor. My point is we can't say, if he's got engineered drawings that call for a cast in place or call for a culvert of X size and of that particular dimension and calls out for certain features, and his site engineer or he has an engineer that observes or sees how it's constructed, and he sees how the rebar is tied in or how the temporary forms are set up prior to pouring, and he gives them the sign off. What's the difference? I mean, the difference is there's your quality control. It's dictated by somebody that goes out in the field and sees that he's got, the proper number 4s, and he's got them tied as showed on the plans, or he's got them located as need be. My point is, we usually, like, as an engineer, if I put out a plan set out to bid, this would fall into a, means and methods for the most part. And that's not something we get into because, number one, we don't own it. Number two, I understand the town's concern about surety that this is not going to fail, but the surety fail would be addressed by a certification by the engineer that looked at it before it's poured.
Just so I understand, in the wording of what the engineer is giving us, does he include his work to do that surety that he is checking it? Because the previous history has been that this parcel owner has been doing work with not under the gaze of an overseeing engineer, and that's where we've seen the problems occur.
The conditions we had was one of the conditions we identified was that the site engineer needs to certify that the work that's being done is in conformance with the plans and specifications.
Okay.
So to me, that means that he says, okay, I looked at what was done. I see that this pipe was installed. I see this basin size was installed. I see this culvert size was installed. And, he develops a letter that certifies that it was done in conformance with the plans and specifications.
I think the bigger issue is with the application that was submitted was there was no design on that culvert, which there needs to be. If he attempted to construct it on site, then there needs to be some sort of design standard. And there wasn't. And the engineer clearly admitted that. He admitted he was not a structural engineer. So it was a concept sketch to show what the size of the crossing, the limits of the crossing, but no real strength design criteria was included. So it was an incomplete design. Now, it was certainly enough information to share with a precaster to say, hey, I need a bridge span for H20 loading that's going to span 14 feet. And they probably have those already made in their yard. So I think what it comes down to is what is our legal ability to make that recommendation, specifically with this case, which the case has been a failure to follow standards and a failure to involve inspection and oversight.
Larry?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
what I was basically saying was, and getting back to Paul's analogy, it's not so much choosing between an Impala and a Chevy, okay? It's more choosing between a station wagon or a subcompact. And it's a design consideration. And I think you can certainly dictate that of what you want. Now, you probably might be getting in trouble or getting in a gray area if you're saying it has to be a Chevy that's made by Ford. I'm sorry, it has to be a station wagon that's made by Ford. If, in fact, the Chevy version of it is just as good. I know that, about 20 years ago when storm scepters or oil water separators were coming into vogue, there were issues that some of them didn't do the job as well as certain other ones. And we, in fact, when I was in Westfield, did dictate particular brands, and other brands kind of brought their standards up to snuff. So I think if you want to precast as opposed to built on site.
But you would be owning that, but you'd be owning the Storm Scepter in Westfield. That's my point.
No, the Storm Scepter would be that would be part of the stormwater system that would be under the homeowners association. You know what I think part of the problem here is, and I noticed this when I was watching this whole thing last meeting, which is they put you in the position of the solution for them.
You're freezing up again, Larry.
And that's, I don't think, the way it's supposed to be. I'm sorry, is it cutting out again?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess my point would just be that from what I noticed was that they were having you design this project for them. And I don't think that's really what your job is. And I think that when you're dealing with a stormwater management permit, there should be a peer review done on this by an engineering firm that represents whoever the permitting authority is, which in this particular case would be you folks. So that you're not put in the position of having to make engineering decisions.
Right. Was that one of the things that the building inspector as well as the highway supervisor suggested, that there was a third party review? Yeah. I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting because
it was, Dan, but the board decided that evening that we weren't going that route, and we put the onus on the engineer to certify the work being done. So in that vein, my mind would be then the precast probably might be a good idea, seeing as there was no design in place for it, as Keith said. So maybe on the safe side, we should recommend that without any brands, but just the item itself.
Yeah, that was it. To not specify a brand, but to specify a methodology because of the lack of a design.
So I will leave the decision as is, as precast, judging by the comments here.
Do we want to take a formal vote, Paul, or I don't know what our procedure would be?
Yeah, I could.
We're not changing anything.
I could do so.
If we're not changing anything, we don't have to vote on it, right?
No, well, yeah, true. But just to reinsure that, just to be on the safe side, somebody wants to make a motion to stay with that.
Yeah, I guess I'll make the motion. So I'll move to leave the recommendation for precast as is.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Paul?
No.
Dan?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Paul? Aye. All right, thank you. All right, Larry, now you're on the docket for bylaw revisions. And Larry had sent everybody section 6 and section 7. For some reason or other, Larry, on section 6, I had that checked off as we covering that with the dimensional and density regulations.
There was still some blanks we had to fill in.
It was incomplete?
There were still some blanks we had to fill in.
Oh, all right. So
For instance,
I'll let you take over. You want to share or do you want Cindy to share that?
Cindy's going to have to post it up.
Can you post that up,
And
Cindy?
if it gets,
What's that?
Is that okay? Can you see it?
Got it, Larry?
and I'm looking at section 640, number 6.
Hold on. Let me get down on that. Right there?
There you go. Yeah, we added that. And that was where we wanted to kind of have a little wiggle room by giving the ZBA the ability that if for some reason the applicant really has a compelling case for why they should be allowed to have a taller building. And here again, we're talking about accessory buildings. That in fact, they could make their case to the ZBA and the ZBA could approve it if they felt that in fact there were extenuating circumstances where the proposed use required a taller building and the permitting of such a taller building does not derogate from the intent of the bylaw or negatively impact the neighborhood.
Ryan, you've encountered quite a few of those over the years, haven't you?
Yeah, so
Can I interrupt you for 1 second, Ryan? I have to step away because I have to give my husband a message about a phone call. So I'll be right back. It's on the screen. Hold
thank you,
on.
Sydney.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay, so yes, he covers that in number 1, section C, the maximum permitted height for principal structures in that district or the actual height of the principal structure. This is shall not exceed. So what we ran into is people would come into us because they want to put a second garage to their house and the second story of the house is 30 feet and they want the roof line to match. But I believe you're only permitted 20 or 22 feet. It was a shorter distance. So they would come all the time. And I get it. You want the roof lines to match, the structures to match. It was an aesthetics piece. But a lot of times it was because of the topography is why we permitted a permit for that use. But this would curve like 70 to 80% of our hearings is what people come in for height. It's like 80% of our hearings deal with the height because of that bylaw. So, I mean, I'm happy with the way that is, and it also, like Larry said, gives us a little bit of wiggle room if something comes up that we do need something for some height. I'm thinking more of being the commercial or the industrial side. So it gives us some flexibility.
I have a question about what you're saying, but shouldn't we just change the basis of this such that you don't have to deal with that 70 or 80%, such that they can build these accessory buildings to match the aesthetic height of the other building on the property, so that, you know, if it doesn't seem like it seems like a reasonable request, and is it just the wording of this bylaw that causes people to have to go through an extra step of going to see your group to achieve that?
Bylaw is accessory building. It's the max height is 20 feet, correct, Larry?
Correct.
Yeah. So a residential 2-story home is permitted height 35 feet, and RN, RR, RV can be 45, but so people would want to match that 35. So he covers that in number 1, letter C, that it can't be higher than that. So it allows that up to that 35 without Larry putting a specific number saying RN is 35, RR is 35, RV is 45. It's just a caveat that kind of hooks it all, but then also gives the applicant, if they needed, for some reason, if someone wanted to do 35 feet and the cupola is 2 feet taller, so it's 37. I think
I get it now. Yeah. Thank you.
It's ZBA discretion, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Larry, continue.
Yeah, next is right below that is table 3, the height and bulk regulations. And there was a column we added on the right-hand side. Now you'll notice that the 1, 2, 3, the 4th column, we talk about maximum building coverage of the lot. And this is the percentage of the lot, the maximum percentage of the lot that a building can cover of that lot. And these percentages have not changed. What we also talked about was there's a lot of other impervious cover that goes on a lot besides just the building. And we do define that a little bit down below where we talk about driveways, parking, walkways, tennis courts, swimming pools, decks, patios, things like that. And so in light of the new stormwater regulations and the intent or the effort to try to reduce the amount of impervious cover that's placed on a lot, we had talked about having a last column that talked about what's the total amount of, what's the maximum amount of impervious coverage on that lot, including the building.
So I guess 2 comments. One, can you just put the word percentage in that column so people know that it's percent? And my other question is, what did we base those numbers on? The purple numbers.
We based those on the amount of building that was there and based upon the potential use, how much additional impervious coverage would be there. We also took a look at a number of other communities to see what they were going to look, how they dealt with it, and this kind of puts us in the middle. If you notice at the bottom, where for industrial, the building cover is 25%, but the maximum coverage is 60%. That's because, in a large part, additional parking is going to be required for additional loading spaces.
Where did you pull those figures from, Larry? Was that just kind of arbitrary, or?
No, it was looking at what other communities have done.
Other communities, yeah.
What does Westfield have for maximum impervious for industrial?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'm just curious, given Westfield's got a significant amount of industrial development in the city, what's just for comparison's sake, what's their number?
Westfield was 50%. And their minimum lot size was 80,000 square feet.
Yeah. Larry, is there a reason why commercial highway is 80 and IP is 60?
Yeah. Your commercial highway is Route 10 that stretch along Easthampton.
Yeah.
How much of that is not impervious?
Yeah.
It's a lot of parking.
So I don't have an opinion in terms of if it seems too high or too low for that 80%. It's 60, right, for the industrial?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it doesn't preclude us from being competitive. And I guess if if Westfield's at 50 and that's 60, I guess we're okay with that.
Paul, have you got a volume control? Excuse me.
Can you hear me all right?
Do you have a volume control? Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, no, I need to sit closer to the mic. The point I'm trying to make is I just want to make sure we weren't making that impervious area less than our competitors, or excuse me, our neighbors.
But try to encourage business, right?
Or discourage business if it's lower.
Right.
How, Larry, so Westfield, you said IP, the minimum lot square footage is 80,000, which
Same
believe-
size as what you got.
okay, but what is the building coverage is the same as well?
No, I don't know what the building coverage was. The maximum total was 50,000.
On an 80,000 square foot parcel?
Foot lot. Yeah.
Wow, so that's like maximum building coverage would be like 60, 70% round numbers without calculating it out, right?
Yep. Yep.
So should we look at?
Is there any, was this done in conjunction with the next section, for instance, in parking? How does this correlate with the parking requirements for certain types of businesses? And so you've got this impervious coverage. Shouldn't those two kind of go hand in hand in some regard?
Yep. Yes. And when we get to the parking, one of the things we're going to be talking about is actually trying to, where you can, reduce the number of parking that's required.
Right. So say, for instance, we do that bylaw. Could you come back to that and then revisit this and maybe do the analysis then with your percentage of coverage, or no?
I'm not sure. Well, I guess what I would say is when we talk about the parking, keep this in mind.
All right.
Do you feel though, like Paul had said, to encourage or discourage business, the commercial highway or the IP, the 25% is low? Because I mean, if you take 25% of an acre, it's 11,000 square foot building.
Well, this is one of the things that, and this goes way back. And I was in Northampton as a planner at the time. And Northampton has a really, really nice industrial park. And if you've driven through that industrial park, you'll see it's a lot of grass. And on the one hand, it looks really, really nice. On the other hand, if you're talking about maximizing the use of property to broaden your tax base, I'm not sure why half of your building lot has to be grass if you're talking about an industrial park.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking out of the box. You take the 25%, you need 3 acres of industrial land to come up with something that's 30,000 square feet. So you've got 120,000 square foot lot for a 30,000 square foot building. I mean, if you look...
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that column is what you currently have in your bylaw.
Right.
Which I think is, which again, if you're talking about a residential neighborhood or something like that, you do want to see a lot of spacing. You do want to see green space and buffering and things like that. But when you're talking about certain types of other uses, and in my mind, an industrial park is a perfect example. I'm not sure why it has to look like a Better Homes and Gardens.
Yeah.
All right, so is there a suggestion for changing that equation on the
commercial highway and IP?
Yeah.
Do you make it 50% or 45%? I mean,
well, I think you have the same issue when you're looking at your commercial highway.
Commercial highway, I would expect in a town like this, you would want more green space than the industrial, definitely. You don't want to see a sea of asphalt.
let's just take for an example of what your commercial highway is, and that's Route 10 up at the Easthampton town line.
Right, that's what it is currently, but we don't have to carry that forward.
Yeah.
If we're trying to reduce impervious surfaces and the rural character of the town in some degree.
Yeah. Well, as a planner, something I reconciled with many, many years ago, which is every town needs its golden mile. That's King Street in Northampton. That's the entire length of Route 9 in Hadley, practically.
Yeah, I was thinking of Hadley. Yes.
It's Route 20 in Westfield. But there are certain types of uses that, just require a lot of impervious cover. And the idea in Hadley was originally just to restrict Route 9 to the Amherst town line and not have it go the full length. But you see how that happened.
All right, so we don't get bogged down in this particular issue. Is there something there that we want to change going forward? The IP, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so I'm just looking at Westfield's here. Westfield has 50% for their industrial A zone.
Correct.
It says not more than 50% of the area of each lot may be occupied by buildings.
Yep. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
Is there any state maximum? Or is it really just up to the town?
Up to the town, right?
Okay, good.
It's local.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yep.
So in this case, if you want to create a golden mile, you'd want to be better than Westfield, right? So you want to be 60, right?
So, Brian, back to the IP. You think the IP should be 80?
I mean, I think it should definitely be more than 25. If you're in that 60 to 80 range, then we just have to look at the impervious when we look at the parking.
Yeah, I think you want to double that.
So IP to 50 maximum building?
Yeah, I mean, I here's the deal. I think, as a professional, I'm seeing a significant amount of distribution industrial sites being erected all over the area right now. And, if we're not making it competitive, then we're in trouble.
Okay, so 50 on the IP maximum. How about the impervious coverage? Go
80.
Go 80 on that. What's the sentiment there?
I think I might go 75 and then leave 25% of the lot as stormwater management.
Yep.
Make the building 60.
Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
What's the difference between industrial A and an industrial in Westfield? Is it the regular industrial is a little more strict than industrial A?
What the hell is industrial A?
I think, Paul, it's like 4 different uses in industrial A than industrial.
Okay.
All right. Any other corrections on there? Are you good with commercial highway? 25 and 80.
I mean,
80 is a lot of impervious.
Can we just?
Well, I guess.
Larry, can you just pan up a little bit? I just want to see the title of that column again.
Cindy, just Cindy. There you
Cindy,
go.
okay, I'm sorry. Please leave that. Okay, thank you. So,
I mean, one of the conversations we had in Hadley when we were updating their master plan with their highway business along Route 9 was, and they've almost reached capacity there now. They don't have a whole lot that's left. And so then the thought was, well, do they just continue to expand more and more to highway business? Or do you allow for an increase in the density on the existing properties on Route 9 to maximize them? Because if you notice, a lot of the businesses in Hadley on Route 9 are single story.
Mhm. I'm just concerned with the limited amount of space we have left currently for commercial.
Yeah.
And I don't envision anything the size of Big Y or Red Rock Plaza coming into fruition on any of the available parcels there. Then, given the fact that these are going to be smaller, should that percentage be reduced on the impervious coverage?
From the 80 get it down?
Oh, I think one of the challenges, and I think this is a balancing act that the engineer will have, or the person that's laying out the site, is finding a happy balance of parking, impervious to building size, right? I think, I don't know if, like, for example, that commercial highway being 25, maybe that seems a little low. Maybe we up it a little bit, but the point I'm trying to say is, it limits your other potential on the site by making it too bigger. So I think inherently this might govern itself in terms of what is feasible on a site lot based on, what they're putting in. So, what I'm getting at is if they put in a building that's a little bigger than 25%, that's going to limit potentially the parking or other features on the site. So maybe it's inherently takes care of itself if we make it bigger.
All right. So leaving it as what's suggested there is not going to deter someone from coming in and building something, do you think? Is that fair to say?
Well, somebody will always take advantage of it if they can find a loophole.
We can always give a waiver.
Where? How?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called a variance.
Or I'm sorry, a variance.
Yeah, which they shouldn't get, but.
Maybe we throw the highway up to 30 and call it a day.
So do you want me to change numbers on here?
No, let Larry will do the editing.
Okay.
So we'll up that to 30. And did you want to reduce the 80%?
No, at least I don't.
Okay.
I think Ryan said he was suggesting, and I forget the number we set for the industrial impervious maximum. What was that? Did we say 75?
75.
Yeah, 50 and 75.
Right.
And that still leaves you a quarter of the lot as green.
Right, which, on a 1 acre lot, that would make sense. 20,000 square foot building, your parking lot, your detention pond, your greenery, that would be a good fit.
And that could actually be taken up just by the setback, your minimum setback requirements.
Right.
And one thing I've noticed with retailers or industrial park developers is they don't want to put in any more parking than they need. And one of the problems you have with commercial zones relative to parking is that you are essentially are requiring parking it's going to be utilized as at a maximum for maybe 1 month a year between Thanksgiving. And for the rest of the year, 11 months, much of that parking lot is going to be left empty.
I really have a simple question that I'm kind of I gotta ask it. I guess as long as they're meeting our stormwater bylaws, why do we have to have a constraint on their impervious coverage?
Because you know we don't want every single square inch to be
Yeah, you're
something that
looking for some green space, Dan.
Okay.
because we want things to look somewhat beautiful.
All right, I see. Okay.
I mean,
Okay,
we don't
are
wanna-
are we good with this and can move on?
Yeah, I think that was the last of the changes on that. So let me save that.
Why are these all highlighted yellow? Were these
Well, because
changed?
the yellow are the first changes that we made
Okay,
over a year ago.
okay.
So we can go back over those again if you want to.
That's what we already covered though, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, we covered that. Let's keep going.
Want me to go to 7, parking?
Are you good with that, Larry? Is
Yep,
there
that's
anything
what-
else needs attention there?
no, I think we can move on to parking.
Just a comment. I had, I can't find the email right now because I can't. It's on here somewhere, but I had an inquiry from someone that wants to develop or open something in town. And I don't know if they contacted ZBA, Ryan, but they had a real problem with the parking equation, given the size of business they were opening up and the square footage. They thought that the existing one parking requirement was outrageous. So
I think that was it at Cumberland Farms?
there was no name on it. That
I
would.
don't think so.
Yeah, the calculation, you're right, they needed like 60 spots for, we've given the variance for that, like at the O'Reilly Auto Parts, I think that parking lot called for 50 spots and they really only needed, 15 or what have you, so we reduced it. I mean, 50 spots would have been crazy in a facility like that.
Okay, that was it. Thank you. Cindy, did you pull up number 7?
Can you see it? It's on there now.
I think that's,
We're still on 6.
Oh, I know why, because I
that
didn't
looks like
close the
still
other one.
6.
I'll fix it.
Close it.
There you go. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to read this all over. But one of the things I'm trying to do is to provide a lot of flexibility for good sense that the number of parking spaces can be reduced without the zoning board of appeals having to prostitute themselves to grant variances that aren't warranted.
Right.
So it allows them to go through a special permit process instead. But does recognize, and we also talk about mixed uses, having multiple uses on a lot, being able to utilize the same parking space during different times of the day, things along that line.
You want to glaze over these or what?
Well,
Are they up? Are you seeing
They're
7?
up. Yeah, they are. You just have to scroll your page now, Cindy.
Okay.
Yeah, good job, Cindy.
Do you have to have it listed for single and 2-family housing?
Do you mean, do you want to require no parking?
Well,
Go back down, Cindy, back down to residential.
I mean, I'm just asking the question. I mean,
If you're going to require parking, you have to have it in your bylaw. If you don't require it, then they don't have to provide it.
okay.
Is this what everybody wants to look at right now? This
Yeah.
one? Okay.
And so what we said here is not only do we have a minimum, but we have a maximum. So
So-
for a single family residence, the minimum would be 2 and the maximum would be 4. But we don't want you to put in 8 parking spaces.
So is the purpose of requiring a minimum so people just don't park on the grass or park on the edge of the road? Is that the reason for it?
Or they don't pave over more than they really need to.
Okay, sorry.
Who's gonna?
And so basically, what we've done is we've expanded the types of uses that we've talked about above, it goes a little bit further than what you have under your current bylaw. But it just, again, talks about, the minimum and the maximum. And I'm not going to go over every single one with you, but if there's something you think stands out, that's wrong or doesn't make sense, we can address that.
Keep scrolling, Cindy, please. So I'm assuming then again, Larry, that this is consistent with some other towns our size.
Yeah, this is basically the model that we put together when I was at PVPC that we used in Munson, and we've used it in a bunch of what I consider to be comparable towns that you have.
Thank you.
To Southampton.
Right.
Okay.
Hey, Larry, the congregate care, the elderly congregate care section, can you go back to that? Just scroll up.
Just scroll back up again, Cindy. Right there.
Yes.
Elderly and handicapped congregate housing. Yep.
So is that, I'm just thinking out loud, is that an appropriate amount of parking spaces we want? Because I know that was it the Coleman Road project we had a question about a couple of years back that seemed like, part of this building became, or part of their site became like a parking lot. And it almost seemed like it was overkill with the amount of spaces, given that there are very low traffic generators, these facilities. Obviously, it's based on support staff that work there for the most part. And
Are you referring to the co-housing, Paul?
No, elderly and handicapped congregate housing.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And he's correct. The only parking you require for that type of facility are for the employees and visitors. Because not a whole lot of the actual clients are going to probably have vehicles or be able to drive.
But one of the things about that kind of housing is the vehicle might be a van or more than one van.
Sure.
Is this adequate parking for that?
You're not going to have 12 vans there. I mean, you're
Well, no, you're right.
You would
I just know
probably
that the vehicle is much larger than a car.
1 or 2 van spaces.
Yeah, I was just thinking about one of the properties we looked at recently. Was it 391 College Highway, and they are considered single-family dwelling, right? But they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parking spots. So either something's wrong with the way we classified them, or what we're showing here.
Well, no, you probably didn't. Did you previously restrict how many parking spaces they could have?
Doesn't this thing say a maximum of 4?
Yeah, but you're talking about a project that you just did, correct?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that would fall under the current. And the current ones, I believe, give you a minimum requirement.
Not a maximum.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why you got it. Now, I would love to know why they needed 8 parking spaces, but
Because it's a group home. But according to the builders, a group home falls under a single housing dwelling. According to they were referencing the law, some laws.
On the other hand, how many of the residents, not the staff, how many of the residents are going to be driving? Why do they need 8? Are they in fact putting some administrative offices into that dwelling?
Typically, no. I mean, you typically don't have that type of activity there, because those are usually run by companies that have office space that's, centered in some urban area or wherever, right? At an office building that
Yep.
does all the management. I guess just going back to my earlier point, I think minimum should probably be half a space per sleeping room, just given that it's a load generator. The maximum is probably a space and a half. That's all I'm trying to say.
And on my point, we would not be, any future projects like 391 College Highway wouldn't be feasible with this maximum of 4.
I'm not certain where they say, my understanding relative to group homes is alike, is that you can't prohibit them. And not because they're treated as single-family homes, but because they're treated as
They're by right, yeah.
an educational type facility. So I'm not quite sure where they came up with that.
That they fall into the single family home category. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're permitted by right.
Right.
Because many towns have tried to ban them.
Yeah.
Or prohibit them. And so, the state basically stepped in and said, hey, these are exempt under zoning.
Mm-hmm.
They're not exempt because they're single family. They're exempt because it's considered to be an educational type facility. And educational uses are exempt under zoning.
Okay, so maybe the person was misspeaking. I just wouldn't want to prevent, like what you're saying, another one of these to be built because of this maximum parking spots.
Well, the other out is and again, ZBA, you throw in the out that, if they can convince the ZBA, through a special permit process that they warrant more, the zoning board can give them a special permit. Similar to what we just did previously on the other chapter. So is everybody on board to reducing the minimum to a half a space?
Sure.
Fine.
Okay.
Want me to move?
Yeah, I unless anybody has, additional things they want to see. So I see on yours that the paragraph, the P is in there. Does that show up on all of yours?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get rid of it. I always use that. Sorry. Freaks everybody out. Sorry.
There you go.
I always type with that. Then I know a lot of stuff. It's not paragraph. It's just a thing that tells you if you have enough spaces, et cetera.
Right, exactly. That's it.
Okay. Shall I keep going unless you...
So then if we did want to allow the ZBA to have the ability to allow for more parking spaces and not have to make them go through a variance, because I really have a hard time making people have to go to the zoning board of appeals for a variance when the zoning board knows that they really don't meet the criteria for it. That's why I always prefer to have the special permit route, because that is the legitimate way for the zoning board of appeals to make a subjective judgment to allow for something. So is that okay? I'll add that in the section someplace. And I can work on that.
you want me to keep moving it or what?
I'm, unless anybody wants to stop.
Sorry.
Is there anything in here, Larry, just off the top of your head about shared parking?
Yes, there is.
Further down?
Yep. There's a whole thing in there about shared park, whole thing in there about allowing lots, who are next to each other to combine their parking.
Can we just hold up? Can we go up a page or just go up a little bit? There's a reference to Route 10 in there.
Yep.
That's about curb cuts right there.
Yes.
I know. I'm just trying to find the header.
Yeah,
Okay.
number 6.
Why do we need to be specific to Route 10? Why isn't it anywhere else in town?
Okay, I gotta find it. Hold on. Number 6?
This
Yes.
is C6, and I think it's on page.
Is that because of maybe the
Page
commercial
5.
commercial highway? Because
got you. Hold
that's
on.
the reason.
Well, what if they're on a corner and they want to go off on a side street?
Let's see. Hold on. Well, let's see. If you look at number 1, it says 1 driveway per business shall be permitted as a matter of right. Where deemed necessary by the planning board, 2 driveways may be permitted as part of the site plan approval process.
Number 6.
Activities.
I guess my point is minimize curb cuts and turning movements onto roads. I don't think we need to be specific and say Route 10.
Really? The Route 10 is the only one that I see is having the real issues, but let's see.
Well, most of Route 10 is not our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's true. So would you like to just take the reference to Route 10 out?
Well, I think we can just be very general because in reality, you can have a corner lot, right? That could be a corner of Route 10 and a side street. And, they could put on several driveways on a side street. And by reading that, you're minimizing, curb cuts. Maybe it's not a, good practice to have whatever they propose to have on a side street. The point I'm saying is it just limits its intent.
I think I agree with him because that particular parcel that Dan was referring to, what was it, 391 College, whatever number it was, that was originally, remember the church came to the planning board and they might have put their driveway accessible through Valley Road. So that might have made a difference. I think that's what you're talking about, Paul, right?
Number 6 only deals with existing curb cuts. And it's where you're trying to reduce the number of curb cuts.
Oh,
Where does it say that existing?
In an effort to
Right
reduce
up to
the number of
Route
curb
10.
cuts and turning movements onto Route 10, where an existing parcel has more than 1 curb cut accessing onto Route 10, the planning board may issue a special permit allowing for a reduction of. So what you're trying to do is give them a sweetener to eliminate any curb cuts that they really don't have to have.
Well, I agree with Paul that if Route 10 is not our jurisdiction, so just eliminate Route 10, correct?
Well, no. Route 10 is your jurisdiction. I mean, it's just that you don't issue the curb cuts. The state issues the curb cuts.
you're cutting out, Larry.
No, I stopped talking.
Oh. Sorry.
my question would be, do you just want to remove the reference to Route 10? And have it apply generically? I don't see a problem with that.
Paul?
That's my suggestion.
All right.
Okay.
All
Is
right.
that a consensus?
Yep.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
One. Let me just make my edit note here. And we'll do it at both those spots. Okay, that's good.
Keep going.
Yep. Just a question on D loading areas at number 1. Is that calculation, is that adequate for everybody's?
We have a reference to Main Street somewhere in there. On the
It's the next one up.
Below or above?
above.
No, it's something.
Oh, right here, Main Street. We don't have a Main Street.
Yeah, I think we should just remove that reference. Yep, that goes out.
You want to replace that with Route 10? That's our Main Street.
You're getting punchy, Paul.
Yes, I am. Yes, yes.
Okay, so you're just going to delete onto Main Street out of this paragraph, just have it end with movements?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we keep going or what? Everybody happy with loading areas?
Yeah, that dimension good with everybody there, or Ryan or whoever? I'm not up on that, Paul. That sound okay?
I don't know if that's appropriate. I guess it seems small to me, 25 feet.
Well, yeah, considering a tractor trailer, the box is 53 feet long. So
Yeah.
do you just make it 12 by 75?
That makes sense.
Well, what's the intent of this? I think that's important.
The intent is for buildings that are going to be having tractor trailer trucks backing into the property to offload product or load product, that they accommodate that. They put into the design of this parking and the design of the building.
Yeah, I think that number needs to be changed then.
Yeah, 12 and 75.
That's what Brian recommended. Does that sound all right?
Can you also change the wording instead of saying not less than 1? Can you say at least 1? Just the negative part throws me off at the beginning.
Well, not less
At
than
least
1 is
one?
0.
At least you got not less than 1. All right, what's that?
0.
How about minimally
Yeah,
one
we do.
loading space?
At least one, minimally one. Yeah, something along those lines. First in the positive.
So what do you guys want?
Minimum?
Minimally. Minimally one loading space.
No, that's a terrible word.
A minimum of one loading space.
Okay.
Is this,
We all set with that?
Yep.
All right, Cindy, keep scrolling. Landscaping next, everybody. That's pretty standard, all this landscaping, I'm assuming. Except for maybe the parking area landscaping might be contentious with trees.
What's contentious about that?
It is vague. I mean, as far back as possible. It's just it doesn't mean much.
So you're breaking up the you're breaking up the parking lot in that respect, correct?
Which one are we looking at?
Number one.
Yeah, keep scrolling down, Cindy. Number one.
Oh, okay. But
Keep
but I
going.
have a question about buffer strip landscaping.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at, isn't it?
Is the sidewalk width correct? 5 foot wide sidewalk, number 4?
typically that's what we say.
Was there something under number 1 first? Did somebody have an issue with number 1?
No.
No, just on the parking number 1, not on this.
Shall I keep going? Okay.
Wait, was there something in here, Larry, that
You just
Where
said something about trees.
I said something about trees. I just said the number 3 on power lines is just vague because you say as far back as possible. Well, that doesn't.
The intention is not to hit the power lines. So, I mean, it's the engineers or the landscape architect's responsibility to identify appropriate spacing. I mean, they're not going to put they're not going to propose a maple tree.
Yeah.
That's gonna grow 30 feet high underneath the utility pole line.
So I guess it's just smaller. I guess
It's almost a reminder not to be stupid.
Yeah, it's just usually you want to say like a specific distance based on type of tree, but I guess you're kind of.
But that's not our call. That's the professional's call who's stamping the plans to say that, it's an appropriate spacing that they're putting in a dogwood.
For commercial, they're going to be coming in for you for either a special permit and or a site plan approval anyway. So you're going to be able to take a whack at it.
It's almost a throwaway comment or a throwaway statement, but whatever. It's my opinion.
Is there something in here, Larry? I'm trying to find it now that there was a buffer strip where if it was commercial highway or IP or CV and up against the residential area, it was like 25 feet wide, or am I?
No, I think you might be right. We'll have to see if we come across that.
Okay.
Let's see.
Keep going.
Okay, so you had a question about the sidewalk, Cindy?
No, that was above, and
Under
I
number
think it was
4?
answered. It was answered. It is no longer a question.
All right, I got a question about the parking. So 1 and 2 don't seem to jive to me. You want 1 tree per 10 spaces within the parking area, which does that mean if the parking area is going to be subdivided? Because number 2 says you shall have trees around the perimeter, but it doesn't give the spacing of the trees.
2 different things. Number 1 has to do with providing shade trees within the parking lot. So for every 10 parking spaces, you need to provide a tree with a minimum caliber of 2.5 inches.
All right, so
that's within the parking lot itself.
that's within the
Number
parking
2,
lot.
That's correct. Number 2 is talking about, the perimeter, the
Right,
property line.
So this is creating islands, in other words, within the parking area,
That's correct.
correct?
And you will find that in the summer, the first parking places that get taken up in any parking lot are the ones that are going to be in the shade of the tree. I mean, it's not only an aesthetic issue, it's a heat island issue.
No, I get it. I get it.
Okay.
So the parking, number 2, the parking strip is 5 feet wide, and it says trees around the area, but it doesn't give the distance. Is that going to be assumed at 10 spaces wide too, or are we going to put a?
No, because it might not necessarily be trees. It could be shrubs.
All right.
And this is sort of so that abutting properties aren't looking at the grills of 20 cars that are parked along the edge of their property line.
I never thought about that.
Okay.
Well, when you see it, Cindy, you see the reason why you want something like that.
There's nothing here that says about street trees though on a parking area that's abutting a street. Correct?
Correct, because typically street trees are going within the right of way.
And you can't condition it?
Well, they're going to be the town's trees.
Well, they're in the right of way on subdivisions.
Yep.
Well, we want to look, I mean, that's a subdivision, I mean, that's maybe a site plan approval review that we make to make that comment.
Yeah.
The point is, sometimes you don't want to just start putting trees everywhere, particularly near intersections, if they're going to be limiting site distance.
Well, site distance isn't signage.
What?
We had an example when I was in Northampton. We planted cherry trees along both sides of Main Street in Florence, and they were lovely. Except that all the businesses hated them because when they started to mature, they were screening their signs, and so little by little, the building owners went out and started picking off the branches, eventually killing them.
Well, that's pretty much what the Northampton did on King Street. They put them, the regs there are every 30 feet on King Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they put them right underneath the utility lines.
Yeah. Okay, keep scrolling, Cindy, please. Okay, shared parking. I want to just look at this. Keep going. Okay. Is there anything there in that says shared parking that has to be accompanied by a valid lease or an agreement between the two parties?
Yep. And when the lease expires, the permit expires.
Is it further down?
Let's see.
They have to submit a parking management plan, but I'm wondering about the verified.
It should be noted that such permit is contingent upon the continued ability to legally use the off-site facility, and that said special permit and any uses dependent upon it shall terminate upon the termination of any legal agreements.
Where are you finding that?
After number 4.
Where am I? Am I in the wrong spot here? There's
I
only-
see it. No, I see it. Yeah,
We're down to off-site parking.
yeah, keep scrolling. It's in another section.
This
So-
one?
Why
Okay.
wouldn't that be?
The shared parking is going to be on a single lot.
Yeah,
If you're going to be utilizing parking on somebody else's lot, then you've got to get the off-site parking approval.
I
And that's
got
where
you.
you have to have the illegal, cross
Yeah.
easements.
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, go down to J. Is there anything about that paragraph, reduction of required parking? So in other words, they're asking, they can ask for a waiver of up to 20% reduction?
Sure. I mean, and they may be able to come in and give you the argument, they give the examples here. They have public transit. So many people are going to be taking the bus they won't be driving cars. So if they can come in and give you a legitimate argument for why they don't need that number of spaces, then why make them do it?
If we can approve such, should there be any language in there about the word waiver, requesting a waiver for same?
Be variance.
No, you got the special permit.
No, all right.
Hey, Paul, one thing I would suggest maybe add in there. So a lot of times what we have is we run into some communities that haven't really thought through some of their parking generation numbers that they need, or parking requirement numbers, which exceed industry standard. So I would suggest maybe we add another item in there, number 4, that would probably say something like, and I'm not sure how this gets worded into there, but there is a publication developed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers that has a parking generation manual publication that identifies recent trends and need for certain parking sizes. So maybe you say,
I don't think you have to add a new number 4, because it says that the intro to 1, 2, and 3 is that you have to submit a parking management plan demonstrating that a reduction is warranted as a result of the utilization of transportation demand management measures, which reduce automobile, which may include 1, 2, and 3. But it doesn't say it only has to be 1, 2, and 3. So if you can continue, again, make a legitimate argument, because I have found that if somebody can come up with a better idea than me and something that I haven't thought of, well, that's terrific.
no, that works. We're fine. We're fine. I know the word include, may include. I get it.
Keep going.
Yeah. Anything there that's a gray area in your mind? Combined parking lots?
Who came up with the $2,000 fee?
Oh, you just pull it out of the air. If you really want to know what the cost is for a parking space, it's a hell of a lot more than $2,000.
Just ask the owners of Eastside Grill in Northampton.
Yeah, exactly.
Although back then I think it was $1,000 a space.
Yeah, I mean, at the last time I figured it out, a parking deck space was like $32,000.
Yeah,
and that was back in the 90s.
50 now.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So if you're going to charge them $50,000 a space, no one's going to do it.
Well, do we really want to put a number in here? Because is it possible to say a fee, see fee schedule? And then if the fee schedule changes because of the value of a dollar in 10 years, we don't have to go back and edit these bylaws.
Well, I guess let's look at this logically, and this makes sense if the community or the town or the city has the ability has the ability to actually create and provide for these parking spaces. If in fact you don't think that's ever going to really happen in your commercial village district, then I would say take out the whole section.
I don't know about that. You never know.
Say, we can't predict what might happen.
We do have a sidewalk fund now that Ryan very nicely donated to.
Well, I want to buy a parking spot while I'm at it.
Did you do the sidewalk?
No, I think we should leave that in there. Has anybody got some comments on that? They feel strongly about leaving that in just in case?
I mean, I think you should
buy an eye, please.
Wait a minute, who's up?
Oh,
Ryan, go ahead.
No, I think you should leave it.
Okay, just keep in mind, if somebody comes in here and asks you to do that, you don't have to go along with it. It's up to the board's discretion whether they want to allow that or not.
Yeah, but the town needs the money.
I think I just don't think we can put the number in there.
$2,000 is nothing.
That's right. It's nothing. Maybe we might want more.
$5,000. Yeah, exactly. I think you do have to put a number in there so that you don't become arbitrary. And you charge Ryan $20,000 and then you require somebody else to pay $5,000?
No. We don't want to be arbitrary. However, what I'm suggesting is don't put the fee in the bylaw. Say, see fee schedule, and then create a fee on the fee schedule that could be edited or modified as time goes on as necessary.
Can it just be at the discretion of the board or no?
Well, he doesn't want it to be arbitrary.
Well, I just don't like leaving it up to they like Joe, but they don't like Ryan. So they charge Joe $2,000. They charge Ryan $10,000.
Is there any language you can put in there about market rates or whatever the existing going price is? Any language of that?
Well, no, I wouldn't do that because that's going to be an enormous number.
Or
once again, though, I agree with you. You don't want to put it too high because then you might deter some small business from throwing the towel in.
Sure.
I think.
I mean, it just may be too confusing to have in here.
Other than that, has anybody got any questions? We'll leave that as is and just go with it.
Okay.
That's it.
I think we're at the bottom.
There we are.
I think I would change. I think I would change the $2,000 to $5,000.
I was going to say that.
I like it.
I would support it.
Just my question is, why 5,000? Everybody seems to like it. I just want to understand it.
Because it's more money.
How about 20,000?
Okay.
Because at some point, Proposition 2.5 might not pass, and we could use the money.
So you think 5 is fair then?
Yeah. Sure.
Paul?
I think so.
Keith?
Yeah, I'm good with 5,000.
All right, so be it.
Okay.
right, thank you, Larry. Maybe going forward here, we can keep moving if we don't have a big agenda, which typically this time of year we don't. Open space and recreation could change that, though, given what we were handed tonight. But
Yeah, good luck with that.
yeah, thanks.
Oh, and Dan is correct. You do need to identify a lead agency or entity for each of those goals or objectives, because otherwise, everybody thinks the other person, the other board, is doing it.
It's either that or you've got to have joint meetings with the groups to do that.
Yeah, and typically, it's pretty much self-evident based upon whatever the objective or goal is as to who that falls upon.
I'm gonna get that chart and have it forwarded to you, Larry, so you can see as we go along, and also in the chapters we've already covered in the zoning revisions, what we might include in that bylaw to say refer to the open space and recreation as we're going along.
Okay.
Things that might apply to each one of them. Okay, so
I'm probably going to just tell you you did it all wrong, and you have to go back and start it all over again.
What do you think of that, Cindy?
don't go.
Oh,
Don't do
Larry,
that.
you're my favorite consultant,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, that's all from my standpoint. Larry, so I'll be in touch. I know you're not going to Mexico, so you'll be around, so we might be able to continue on with the next section.
Yeah, I'll start working on the next one.
Yeah, get it ready, and then I can probably let you know the Thursday before the next meeting to see what the agenda's like. But again, there's nothing major coming up that I'm aware of. So given that, I'll ask for an adjournment unless, Cindy, you've got anything important on committees that you need to report on?
We don't have anything important.
All right, thank you for being my secretary again, my Zoom secretary.
Whoa.
That didn't sound good, did it, huh?
No, it did not.
That's a microaggression there, Paul. Come on.
Uh-oh.
I'm happy to help.
I'll have to think of some politically correct language the next
Just
time.
say, thank you, Cindy. That's all.
All right. Zoom lady. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Anybody second that?
Second.
Keith, are you still awake?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. Quiet night for me.
All right, motion made and second. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. Thanks, Ryan, for joining us for the frolicking time we've had here. John?
Anytime.
We'll see you again next time.
All right.
Good night.
Stay well, everybody. Stay safe.